Okay, so last time we were here, we discussed Relu and we saw that how Relu will be helping us to avoid vanishing gradients. And once we discussed that, so let me show you the paper where it was introduced at that time. So it was in 2012 by this paper, ImageNet Classification with Deep Neural Networks by Jeffrey Hinton. So there were three authors in for this particular paper, and in 2012, what they have done is actually they have used ReLU first time. So in this paper, it was first time introduced. So this is a snapshot from that particular paper, and you can see that they have plotted two curves. First curve is related to the tan hyperbolic curve, and the second curve is related to the ReLU. So it's a training error rate, what they have plotted over here with epochs. So they were using at that time 4 layer CNN, and they used ReLU activation units. So once they used ReLU activation units, because prior to that people were using tan hyperbolic. So once they used that, so what they have observed is that the training error rate that we have here in case of ReLU is going faster. You see how it is going faster as compared to the case when it is tan hyperbolic. So this is the major breakthrough that they had achieved at in 2012, where they used ReLU activation units as compared to tan hyperbolic. So if you guys want, then you can actually look for this particular paper and gain more intuition in why they went for ReLU and all that story what they have written in the paper. You can go and see the details. So this is the actually one of the seminal papers, and if you go to the Google Scholar and see how many citations this particular paper has, so it has like more than 1 lakh citations. So it's like it's a very famous paper at that time, and people cited it like anything. So it's like 1 lakh citations for this particular paper. Very important paper as far as the introduction of a new concept which is ReLU was introduced. Second thing which most of you know is the advanced version of this ReLU, which we call as leaky ReLU. And in the leaky ReLU, what happens is in the negative side of that activation potential, which is X or Z in our case. So here it is GZ at that now. So if the activations that if the summation of the activations is on the negative side, what happens is that leaky ReLU is actually assuming a slope, and that slope is what they have taken is as 0.01x, but it can be a hyperparameter also. You can write it as alpha x x, and you can use this alpha to get it learned during the back propagation. This can also be done, but that is advanced version of it. But if you want this alpha not to be a hyperparameter, but if you want it to be a fixed value, then you can keep it as 0.01x. So what it will give you is a slope here, a slight slope. So by giving a slight slope onto the negative side helps us in removing this problem which is given over here, which I discussed last time also. It's like zero, which is the dead activation states. So if that slope is there, then the dead activation will not happen. So in order to avoid this problem of zero, they have kept it as a slope over here. So this is the one. And one more advanced version of this, again a leaky ReLU or a ReLU is, I'll show you here. So that is like if you have a ReLU which is given like this, and you know that this particular leaky ReLU is having an advantage over the ReLU because of because of this region where we have dead area. So what they are doing is they are putting a slopes to avoid this dead area. But can anybody tell me what is the problem with ReLU itself? Like apart from this dead activation, there is one more problem. Can anybody tell me what is that? I discussed it last time also. Okay, so the problem that ReLU has is this differentiability at this point. This point is not differentiable at all. As we have seen, when we did the derivative of this, it was a step function. So this differentiability was a problem here. It's not differentiable at this point. So what people have done is they have again used a approximation of this Relu, which is differentiable everywhere. And what they have done is they have created a curve which looks like this. And this curve is basically a smooth approximation of this particular piecewise Relu. Why I'm saying it as a piecewise? Because you have a piece here for less than 0 and a piece here in when z is greater than 0. But this particular curve is a smooth approximation. There is no piece, and you can observe that the derivatives at all the points in this particular curve will always be there. So it will always be there, and this difference, which is seen over here, this difference will be very small. So that's why what we are saying is it's an approximation of this curve. Just a quick feedback. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So, so this approximation is we want it to be as small as possible. So this curve, which is people have proposed, is actually a approximation of this piecewise. So this is more advanced version where the differentiability problem of Relu is avoided. Okay, so now today what we will discuss is some more advanced concepts. But what I have told you is I have answered most of the questions related to the activation functions. Like you must be knowing now, like which activation functions to use, why to use, and what is the advantage or disadvantage of these three activation units. So our next topic of discussion is the loss function. So you must have seen this picture, I think now 2-3 times. So uh, now our main focus will be on this loss function, which is here, this loss function. Earlier we have not discussed anything about it, but now the time has come because you have understood all parts of this particular architecture. Other than that, loss function is only the thing which is left. So we will discuss this loss function and we will see what are the different type of loss functions that you use at the output unit of the neural networks. So what is the main function of loss function? The main function of the loss function is to actually compare these two vectors. First is this one and the second one is this one. So this is the true vector that you have from the data set, and this is the vector that it is obtaining from the neural network. So you want to compare these two in order to evaluate how far these two are, and you want actually this particular vector to be as close to this vector so that the loss is minimized. So let us see what are the different kind of loss functions and under what situations you will use which loss function. So this is the particular block diagram that shows you basically what we will be using as a loss function is the cross entropy loss. But cross entropy loss has two different variants. So depending upon the situation, we will be using one of the either variants of cross entropy loss, which is given over here. And even before that, when you are actually earlier comparing this vector with this vector, this is also not possible exactly. So what we do is, depending upon the task that we have, it depends upon the task. We will discuss what that task is. We will either select softmax or we'll select sigmoid. So depending upon our task, we will select either of these two blocks, and what will they do is they will transform this variable vector, which is a, which is coming from the neural network, into an intermediate vector here, and then that intermediate vector will be compared with the original data set labels using this particular cross entropy loss. So this transformation is actually required to convert a neural network output, which is over here, to an intermediate vector, which is over here. And after that, we will be using cross entropy loss to do that. And this conversion is actually done by softmax units or sigmoid units, depending upon the task. So let's discuss the tasks that are available, and depending upon which task, which has to be used, either whether we have to use softmax or sigmoid. So actually, the tasks that are available in classification are of two types. One is the multi-class class, another one is the multi-label class. So depending upon the two, we have to select either sigmoid or the this one softmax. So what is actually multi-class classification? Multi-class classification has these three characteristics which are listed in A, B and C. So the first one is that each sample belongs to one of the C classes. So right now we have C classes, means here in this particular example I have taken three classes. One is sun, moon and the cloud. So these are the three different classes. And what are the samples? Samples are the images where we have these three separately. So these are the samples and each sample belongs to one of the C classes. So here we have cloud, in this we have sun, and here we have moon. The artificial neural network, that is the neural network we are discussing, will have C output nodes. So here as you can see over here we have Q nodes. So that Q is actually C in this particular situation which we are discussing. So these nodes will be C or Q. And the target vector, that is this vector, this particular vector which we are calling here is the target vector, and it is always available to you. So this target vector will be one hot encoded with a positive class and C minus 1 negative class. So by saying on that one hot encoded means all the values will be 0 except the value of that particular class will be 1. So here we have this cloud, so it is 1 here. In case of sun, we have 1 this side and rest of the two classes will be 0. And in this case moon, we are having 1 here and the rest of them are 0. So these type of encoding is called as one hot encoding, and the target vectors which we have over here will be represented in this fashion. Okay, so once that is done, so we observe that if we have samples like this where each of the image has one class, so like here we have one class, this class and this class. So based on this type of situations, we will be using softmax units at this point. So what softmax unit is doing is actually it is transforming to the intermediate vector which I was discussing earlier from this vector by using this softmax block, and the transformation equation is this. Please note this is b to I. So what I am saying is this particular vector I am representing as b2 and this is basically a2, and each of the individual elements of this b2 vector I am indexing it with I, and same is here. So you can see that b2I, where I is running from 1 to q, is actually represented by you raise these values which you are obtaining from the neural network exponentially. So you are raising the activation unit exponentially for that particular ith node divided by the summation of the summation of all the exponentially raised activation units. So this equation is very simple. There is no, I think there is no problem in understanding this. But one thing that is important is that there is a subjective constraint, and that constraint is that all the units, whatever units you have here, this one, and this one. So all the units, when you sum them up from I running from 1 to q, that value should represent 1. So this is very important. The representation, like all the nodes should be summed to 1. So what softmax is doing is it is transforming the vector A to vector B, but all the values of that B will, when you sum them up, it will give you a value of 1. So it's in fact representing a probability. So if this node is representing something, it's actually a probability. If this node is representing something, it is also representing a probability. And why we are saying it's a probability? Because of this constraint where we say that all the units should sum up to 1, and probability also range from 0 to 1. So all these nodes are actually representing the probability of a particular specific class, and this is your true labels which are one hot encoded. And now we have this cross entropy loss that we will discuss, because now we know that for multi-class classification technique we will be using softmax. So now the important thing is the cross entropy loss, which is given over here. So this cross entropy loss is nothing, as you might be knowing also, is nothing but it's a summation of variables I running from 1 to q. Q are the number of nodes that you have in here. As you can see, q is the number of nodes of aq and yq. And then we have yi log of bi. So it's just, this is the actual vector and this is the predicted. So you have to take log of the predicted and then yi, and then you put a minus sign at the in the front. And this bi2 is not equal to ai2, as ai2 is transformed to bi2 using softmax. So please note that it has to be like this, and this log is not the log base 10, it is natural log. So here yi is the ground truth and bi2 is the softmax output. Okay, so there is a small example that is just showing you what I was telling. And it's like, if you have a dog image over here, so during the trained model, what you are getting at the output is B2 vector, which I have written directly instead of, we will be having a A2 here, and then we are transforming it using softmax to this vector. And you can see the probabilities are given as 0.5, 0.3 and 0.2. And I am taking 3 class data set, as I was discussing in our last slide also. So the first point is giving you the probability of the dog, which is 0.5. Then we have a cat probability, and then we have a panda probability of 0.2. So we have these 3 different outputs coming from this trained model, which is actually transformed using softmax to get this vector. So these are the probabilities. Why? Because when you sum these values up, its value will be 1. So it's actually the softmax output. So what you will do now is, you will take these 2 vectors. As you know, we are discussing the dog case. So the dog will have a value of 1. The rest of them will be all 0 here. In case of this particular situation where the output has to be dog, because we are feeding dog image here. So the loss that we will be calculating for each class, I am denoting it by x. So it will be minus y subscript x log of b subscript x superscript 2. So where x will be ranging from 1 to 3. So the loss for the dog will be this one. It's very simple. So its value is 1. As you note here, it's 1. And then log of 0.5, which is this one. So once you evaluate this, its value is coming as 0.693. The loss for cat is actually given as 0 because this particular label is already 0. And similarly for panda also. So the total loss that you will calculate for all the classes will be minus summation I running from 1 to q. Here q is 3. Then we have y log of b to I, and this value will be 0.693. So this is the loss that is incurred, and you have to reduce this loss during the back propagation. Okay, so if this is okay, as it is simple also, so there is no problem in understanding it. So I want to just give you a physical understanding of why this particular loss makes sense. So you might be knowing that we have already written it for the case of dog, where y1 will be 1. So what is left is minus log of b2 1. So if b2 1 is not exactly the value that we have put in here, right now what we have done is we have kept the value as 0.5. Now what I will be doing now is I will vary this value. So that's what I am showing over here. So right now I am not putting it as 0.5, which is the specific case which I had discussed in our last slide. But now what I am doing is I am varying this value, and its value will be ranging from 0 to 1. And why it will be 1? Because it's actually a probability. That's why its value will range from 0 to 1 and it cannot exceed 1. So if you plot the value of log x minus log x, it will be like this, which is given over here. So from here what you can see is, like we are taking the case where the label is 1. That is a true class. So in that true class, you have this plot. So what it shows is that if you are considering the label as 1, which is the true label, and your output which is coming from the neural network is also 1, then what is the loss? The loss is 0. So it means there will be no loss. And what you have done is you have correctly identified the labels that are predicted from the neural network. So there is 0 loss, and you also want that, because if a neural network is able to recognize it as a dog, then why to penalize it? So this can be seen over here that there is no penalization because loss is 0. But in this particular case, if the value is 1, but if you suddenly predicted a value of zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.3, then it will give you a very high loss, very high loss. So it will penalize the neural network with this high loss. So this shows that you have to this particular log x is one of the perfect loss functions that we can use for our classification purpose, because when the predicted output is totally different from the actual output, we have to penalize the neural network with very heavy cost. So it's evident from here. And if the neural network is predicting the same output as that of the as that of the actual output, then we do not need to penalize it. So that's why the loss over here is 0. So that's why this is the physical understanding of this particular cross entropy loss. So are there any questions related to any of this what I have discussed?
Sir,
Yeah.
if we are using softmax as the activation function in the last layer, then why do we again need to use softmax for transformation?
No, I'm not using in the last layer the softmax unit. It has to be a simple output from the last layer. That like what you are saying is in the neural network in the output layer you are already using the softmax, right? This is the output layer, right? This is the final output layer of the neural network. Here we have multiple layers, right? So this is the final one. In this we want to do the transformation. This may be coming from sigma activations or the tan hyperbolic activations inside. But once we get these values, then we will be transforming that using softmax to get another vector, which is the softmax output.
So the softmax is not the activation functions for the last layer of the neural network.
No, it's not that. It's not that. You have to transform it depending upon the situation, depending upon whether you are using a multi-class or the multi-label, which I will be discussing next. Okay.
But if you use softmax as an activation, then we do not need to do this transformation.
Yeah, right. But some way or the other, you are actually using that transformation, by using softmax. So it's some way or the other, it's there. It's not a layer. It's like a mathematical transformation that you are doing for your, for your particular outputs that you are getting here. There is no weights involved. It's just a mathematical transformation. There is no trainable weights here. You can see that, right? So it's a mathematical transformation just to represent this particular AI2, which is coming from the neural, to represent it into a different form, which is BI2. So since there is no learning of weights here, because there is no trainable parameters, so whether you do it on the last layer itself or you do it after that, it doesn't matter. So it's not a problem. Okay? Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, so once we have finished off with this, then there is another problem which we call as multi-label classifications. As you will see in segmentation tasks, like semantic segmentation problems, we have these type of problems where we have multi-label classification. We have to do multi-label segmentations there. So in that situation, we have again 3 different characteristics. The first is that each sample can belong to more than one class. So as discussed earlier also, you can see this site also. I have actually taken this picture from there. So this particular sample which we have here is sun, moon, and cloud. So now the samples are different. In the samples now we have in this particular picture we have 2 classes. In this particular picture only one is there. In this we have all the 3. So in that type of situation, even your label vectors, that is the true labels y, will also change. It will not be one hot encoded. It will be the labels that are actually present in this particular sample. So here 101, here it is only 1, so 010. In this case all the 3 are present, that's why 111. So these labels are different from that of one hot encoded vectors. So this is the only difference between multi-label and multi-class classifications. So if this is the situation, like in case of semantic segmentation, if you are working on, in that case, the curve, the diagram that I had showed you earlier will change to this. Here you will have sigmoids instead of using the softmax. So this sigmoid will be there, and everybody knows the transformation that is involved in this particular case of sigmoid, which is this one, quite easy. And even you have to note important point which is over here, which is if you sum all the components of this vector bi, it will not sum up to 1. So that shows that this particular node, if it is outputting some value, and if this particular node is outputting some value, will not be the probabilities. And the reason for that is, if you sum all these nodes together, the value is not coming as 1. So please note, if you are transforming it through sigmoid, the nodes that you will obtain in the intermediate value as an intermediate value will not represent the probabilities. It will be the individual scores for that particular class. And this is the true label. And now we have to discuss the binary cross entropy loss here. Earlier it was cross entropy, and now it is binary cross entropy. So for this particular type of situations, we will be using binary cross entropy. And what is that? It is this one. It is just a just a simple special case of original one which we had here. So what we do here is that binary cross entropy is actually represented in this fashion. And here what we do is we will actually implement this particular equation for each individual classes. So this we have already discussed, which is even the curve for that I had already discussed that this curve is there, right? For the case when y is equal to 1, because if you put y is equal to 1 here, this will go away, this side, it will not be there. So in that case, we have already discussed about this curve. Now we will discuss when y is equal to 0, because we are discussing binary cross entropy, like it is either 0 or 1. Binary means either 0 or 1. So in this case, when y is 0, you can see this particular part will go away, it will not be there, and only this will be there. So if this situation is there, then what will happen is, if you plot this curve, that is minus log of 1 minus x, it will be plotted something like this. If you check that, it will be something like this. And we are restricting the values between 0 and 1, and the reason for that is this activation is available here. So we will be restricting our values to 0 and 1, and now you can see that if your actual label is 0 and if your predicted label is also 0, there will be no loss. This is what you also want from a neural network, that it should not create any penalty when the prediction is right. But if the prediction is 1 and your value is 0, the actual one, then you have very high loss here. This value is very high. So that also you want. So in that sense, when you combine these two together, these two functions together, then it will give you this particular expression. And you note that we have to do this particular addition of these two curves for each class. Like here you can see that we have summation running from I running from 1 to q. So we have to do this binary cross entropy type of thing for 3 different classes. Q is equal to 3, because we have these 3 different situations. So you have 3 classes, right? 1, 2 and 3. So binary cross entropy will be done for all the 3 classes individually. So as an example, if you see here, suppose if you have an image which is over here and you have 2 different classes present in it, one is the dog, another one is panda. So in that type of situation, your target value will be 101. This is quite simple, as I discussed also in our earlier slides. And if the prediction is like this, let us say if the prediction is coming like this, and you note that once you add these predictions together, it is not coming as 1, so it will not be representing the probability. Please note, it will not be the probability values. It is just the score of these particular individual classes. So if that is the situation, then you have to do binary cross entropy for each individual class. Like for this case, we have dog class. So what we will do is, we will do the binary cross entropy for this particular dog case, where y is 1, the target value is 1, this is 0.6, and the negative of that class will be 1 minus 1, which is 0, 1 minus 0.6. So this value comes out to be 0.510 in particular case when it is a dog. In the case of cat, you will do that same analysis. You will put 0 here as the label which is coming from this side, and then log of 0.7, then 0 minus 1 log of 0.3, which is 0.7 minus 1 minus 0.7, that's why it's 0.3. So its value will be coming as 1.2. And same for panda also, you will come out, the value will come out to be 0.916. So the total loss that is calculated for this particular image which has multi labels will be 0.510, 1.2, 0.916, then it is 2.631. Okay, so some way or the other it is actually doing one versus all classification, where where if he wants to calculate the accuracy of the dog or loss for the dog, what it will do is it will assume the dog images as 1, and it will assume all the other images, whether it's cats or panda, as 0. So if that is the situation, then it calculates the binary cross entropy for this particular class, that is dog. And similarly, when it calculates the binary cross entropy for case of cat, it will assume all the labels, all the images corresponding to cat as label 1, and it will assume all the images other than that cat with label 0. So once that is done, because this you have to do internally, because the labels are already given, but for your calculation you have to do these type of internal manipulations, and once you do that, you will get the binary cross entropy for cat, which is this, and similarly for panda. So it's something like one versus all classification. So once you do that, your total loss will come out to be 2.631. And this is just a similar extension to what we have discussed, which is binary classification. Here, if you have original target as 1, whether in this particular case where it's a dog or not a dog, in this particular case what you do is you actually convert this original vector into one hot encoded, that is 1 0, and this particular label is extended to 0 1 as one hot encoded, and the predictions 0.8 will be again converted to probability vector, where we have 0.8 as this and 1 minus 0.8, which is 0.2, and in this case we have 0.6 and 0.4, and then you do the binary cross entropy loss for these two classes, which is a simple extension to the multi-label class using binary classification. So this is showing you that it's a binary cross entropy for loss, then we have binary cross entropy for dog, and then you add that together. So this value is in this particular situation, which is this one. So now this covers up, I think, most of the topics related to what kind of activation functions we use in neural networks, and what kind of loss we have in neural networks, and depending upon the situations, whether it's multi-label or multi-class, you have to select either sigmoid or softmax. And note that once you give once the output of the softmax is not a is a probability, but the output of sigmoid is not a probability, it's a score for that particular individual class. Is it okay for everyone? If anybody has any doubts, please let me know. Okay, so once this is finished, so let's move to our next topic, which is, now we will discuss some hyperparameter optimization techniques in neural network. And before going into the hyperparameter optimization techniques, I want to discuss some curves related to neural network techniques, because once you do some optimization, you will definitely plot training, accuracy, cross validation, and all that type of stuff. So I just want to discuss in some details like what exactly is going on in behind these curves and what interpretations you can get from it, and what so for this and tomorrow's lecture, it will be all about learning these curves, whether it's cross validation, training, testing, what are they, what are the advantages of them individually, and why we are doing it. So all that reasoning will be discussed in today's class, and in tomorrow's class. So to set up the stage, I will not go straight away to the all these type of things. I will go step by step, and we will reach to the point where everything will be clear to you once this particular lecture is over. So let's discuss step by step, because
Sir,
yeah,
I had a doubt regarding the previous lab.
yeah,
There were two data sets. One was MNIST data set and the second was Cypher
yeah,
10.
yeah.
So we had done similar kind of trained similar kind of neural network for
Hmm.
both of the data sets, but we weren't getting the same sort of accuracy in the
You are not getting
and we
the accuracy, right?
yeah,
So you want to know why it is so, right?
yeah, yeah,
No, I know it. You will not be able to get it. That's why I have kept it. So if somebody has given the answer, then he will be given the credits. But if you want to know why it is so, then one of the sole reasons for that is actually this data set is a RGB data set, right?
yeah,
So you must have flattened it out and created a one single vector out of it.
yeah,
So the R you have flattened it out, then G you have flattened it out, and B you have flattened it out, and you made it as a single vector, right? The dimension of that
yeah.
vector, what is the dimension of that? I think 784.
3000.
3072.
Yeah, okay, 3000. Okay, so the thing is, I wanted to give you that so that you will feel motivated for why that reason is why that is not coming, and this will help you out in moving to more advanced structures which are CNN. So the thing is, as you are increasing the dimension of that particular what do you say, input, there is a possibility that it will overfit and it will create a problem. And second thing is the neighborhood information that we have in the images. Like if you have an image which is a two-dimensional image, and if that you can view that image like you will feel like it's an image. But if you make a one-dimensional vector out of it, the neighborhood information will be completely lost because it will be a one dimensional vector. By seeing a one dimensional vector, you cannot say whether it's a cat or a dog. But if you see it as a two dimensional vector, you will observe that it's a cat or a dog. So that type of neighborhood information is lost. And even the when the input size is increased tremendously so high, then the training time will also increase, and overfitting can be one of the possible reasons for of these type of large vectors. Because of that situation, people have devised convolutional neural networks because of this reason. So we will discuss why we moved to CNN, what is the reason behind that, and this is one of the setting stages which I have given you, the CFAR data set, and you must be knowing that you were not able to get the accuracy more than 49 or 40%. It was not going beyond that, and one of the sole reasons for that is you have to come up with some different architectures to address this problem. That's why CNN came, which addressed this problem, and they used two-dimensional version, not the single vector. If you see the CNN architectures, they will feed input images, not the one-dimensional vector, and that is the main breakthrough. So that is the reason I have given you. Okay, is it okay with you now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we will discuss all these in detail when we will set up the stage for CNN. Don't worry about it. But one thing to keep in mind is this situation which we have encountered where the accuracy was not good. So we will see how we can
But
improve
sir,
this. Yeah. Yeah.
why was there a problem with Relu activation function? Like
Uh,
in the MNIST dataset also, we were
hmm.
getting NAN values in the
Yeah. So
last final matrix.
one thing to note here is what I have given you as a discussion was regarding the vanishing gradients. I never discussed about exploding gradients. You understand? So that situation still remains. The situation of exploding gradients. I didn't discuss it with you. So that type of situation you have to analyze, because similar analysis can be done for exploding gradients. So this Relu activation unit may be contributing to exploding gradients, because it might be the case these gradients were becoming more and it's going beyond the limits. So that type of exploding gradient situation is not actually completely understood till now. But what they have observed is if you do the clipping of the gradients, you can make it manageable within the specified ranges. So exploding and vanishing gradients both exist, and unfortunately, you people faced the problem of exploding gradients, not the vanishing gradients. and the reason is because you used Relu. If you had used sigmoid, then you would have faced the problem of vanishing gradients, not the exploding ones. And because of Relu, it happened that it's created a exploding gradient situation. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So so the next thing is we will understand step by step and setting up the stage. So you will see that some of the slides will go uh, uh, somewhat somewhat away from the normal discussion, but it will converge back to the discussion when we will be moving more and more into the depth. So
Sir,
yeah,
we have one more question regarding.
your voice is breaking. Hello, can you guys hear my voice? Hello? Hello? Can you guys hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So my question was, the problem that we had in the lab was actually a multi-class classification.
Hmm.
Then even in that, why did we use binary cross entropy as the loss function?
So, I told you to use the softmax, right? There.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If you would have seen my classroom's stream, I had given you a suggestion of using softmax, not the binary one. I think you missed out that stream message which I had given in the classroom. You could have seen it there. I asked you to use softmax there, not the sigmoid one.
But so the equations which we were using with
Your voice is breaking. I cannot hear. Can you repeat again, please?
those used
Can,
binary
can,
cross.
no, no. Can you repeat again? Your question. The voice was breaking.
So we use softmax in the last activation layer, but the equations which we are using for backpropagation from the previous lectures, those were considering the binary cross entropy loss function.
Yeah, yeah, right. No, but you have to change it
So
then.
right
You have
now,
to change that. You have to change that equations. You cannot use a2 minus y. But I think that will also converge to a2 minus y. If you derive these equations, if you take the derivative of the softmax, and once you do the derivative and you multiply it with the loss function that you are taking at the output now, so what will happen is you will converge to that same solution, that is activation a2 minus y, which I derived it late in our earlier class, considering it as a binary cross entropy. If you derive it, you will get that same expression. That you have to derive, that the derivative of the loss with respect to the last activation, that value will come out to be the same as that of the binary cross entropy. It will be a minus y. You have to check that out. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. One more doubt.
Yeah.
So we were told that we are to try on multiple epochs, and in every epoch we'll divide it into several batches and run it batch wise. So we had a question: when do we actually update the weights and biases? Do we do that after every batch, or do we do that after every epoch?
Do that every batch, I guess. Not epoch. Epoch. Uh, I guess it will be after every epoch, I guess. That one I have to see. I'm sorry about it. I forgot.
So we can do it both ways also.
It can be done
After
both
every
ways?
batch as well as
Okay.
after. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay.
So the specific case of every batch is known as mini batch gradient descent, and the whole epoch is known as gradient descent. Simple.
Yeah.
And if we update example by example, then it is known as stochastic gradient.
Yeah.
That is from the internet.
Yeah, that one can be done. Actually, I forgot. So even if you want, then you can consult our TA during the this particular lab, which will happen in the next week. And these doubts you can ask there also. Currently, I was not able to
And sir,
recall it. Yeah.
there was another problem. Like the training was taking way too long time. Like for MNIST data set, the train I was also.
Oh, your voice is breaking. Can you repeat again?
So I'm saying that the training was also taking a
Yeah,
very
yeah,
long time.
yeah, yeah, I
For
know, I know.
specifically for MNIST dataset, it was training for about an hour.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
model.
I know.
So
Have you selected that GPU thing in Google
yes,
Colab?
sir.
Yeah.
I selected the GPU. Even if then it took
Uh,
like an
no,
hour.
no. The main purpose for that lab was to make you realize that all these drawbacks motivated us to move to some other architectures. It's not automatically came to some researcher's mind. It was, based on these, these bad experiences that they had with these neural networks, they moved to CNNs. So this thing, once you realized it through the lab, you will appreciate it, because without knowing it, you will not appreciate why CNN came into picture. And maybe once you join the companies, and once you do something on neural network or machine learning later on, you will realize that CNN is also not good. And that you will realize in this class also, when I will discuss the advanced architectures. And one of the person, this Jeffrey Hinton, has already made it clear that CNNs are not good for these particular cases, and that's why we use capsule networks. So all these architectures which are coming later on are, though we are able to do through CNN most of the work, but still Jeffrey Hinton told that CNN is not a perfect, architecture for some particular classes or for particular problems. There is some inherently, major drawback in CNN. So he listed it out, and then he came up with the our latest architecture, which is capsule networks, which are currently gaining, popularity. And we will discuss that architecture in our, advanced lectures when we will go on into week 14 or week 13. So these type of things you should also keep in your mind, that you should not take all these things which I am teaching you as for granted. You have to experience them. You have to experience what is going on in them, what is the problem, why this person has come up with this architecture, what is the reason behind it, why he did that. So all that type of reasoning, if it comes, then you will, naturally you will understand, okay, this CNN came because of these type of reasons, and the reasons you also felt like that. That's why this CNN came. So once we do that CNN, you will see that CFAR dataset or your MNIST dataset is training so fast. There is no problem. So, and one more thing might be the case in your case is that maybe the way you have represented your code is not that optimized as we have in the libraries, the existing Keras or TensorFlow libraries, because most of these people, they are very expert in using numerical linear algebra and all these advanced data structures, and they have created a very highly optimized libraries for you so that you can call them and implement it. But you as a, as a student, will not be able to design that type of highly optimized codes. That's why your code is running slow. That can also be the one of the possible reasons. But as far as number of layers are concerned, if you want to increase that layers from 5 to 6 to 7 or 8, definitely it, even for that libraries, if you use, it will slow down. That's why CNN started up. So all these reasons are there for, all these situations. Any other questions?
Uh, so, sir, how do we visualize the weight matrices? Like, what are we expected to do in when
Actually,
visualizing?
in that visualization, what I was expecting from you people is, like, suppose you have Z1, Z2, Z3, which are the, matrices. So we wanted to see that whether some edges or some, I will show you that. Just a second.
Yes, sir.
So I wanted to just see, like, if you are running an MNIST data set here onto these layers, right? So these layers, if you see, they are on nothing but activations of this particular node. And what I wanted to see is, because this, is already a matrix. So what I wanted to see is how this matrix is actually looking. Because if you do continuous training, it will be a situation where this node, which is the first layer of this particular network, will have some edges, prominent edges like that. So in this particular case, for this situation, it will have some edges like this, and for this, it might be the case that it will have something like this. But when you propagate it to the another higher layer, which is the second layer, and if you want to see the images corresponding to that, then what I will expect is, and it should be there, that if you see the image corresponding to it, it will be, something like a higher edges, not the elementary edges like this. It will be some higher dimensional edges like this, or something like it will look like this, but these are much higher, but some elementary edges. But once you move to another layer, which is one ahead of this, you will have more advanced edges, where it will be completely visible that it's a 9 or it's a 8, something like this. So that type of visualization in terms of edges I wanted to see whether it's possible or not. But I think for your cases it's coming as random noise. I don't know what's the reason behind it. It is surprising, but if you use Keras libraries and all that type of stuff, you will definitely get some visualizations in these edges.
So we get this visualization in Z matrices, right?
Z or A, whatever you want, you can see that, because you have to you have to make it multiply it with sigma to get A1. So you can check for this or this.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was expecting is, maybe if you have if your code is right, then you will definitely get all these type of images there. Okay, any other question?
Sir, since we were expected to do all things and the trading also consuming a lot of typing, sir, it was very difficult to complete the lab in 3 days.
Yes,
Like
sir.
it was the case for most of the us work, and
Oh,
we
okay.
some yes, sir.
Okay, so what do I
Also,
what, so
Sir, sir, at least can we have the submission after the lecture so that we could have discussions and clear our doubts?
no, that is okay. Regarding your submission, the problem is, I am completely okay if most of you would have not done it, but I think most of them have already submitted it before the time. So, can you give me one good reason why, I will extend it? Because it will be totally unfair for the person who has actually given it at 11 o'clock. If you would have been in the same case, then you would also feel, completely, it will be unjustified for you also if you would have submitted at the correct time. So I cannot be unjustified to the students who have actually submitted it at the right time. So
Sir,
yeah.
See, the thing is, the early submissions, most of them would have been half-baked. Like, we submitted it because the deadline was getting close and close.
Sir,
So we didn't really get time to actually
Okay.
go in and optimize everything to
Sir, one more
fullest
thing,
extent.
sir,
We submitted as much as we had done.
sir,
Okay.
That's the issue.
we also had we all
Your voice is breaking. Can you repeat again?
sir, the thing is we all
No, your voice is breaking. Can you write it on chat window what you are saying? Your voice is not audible.